Hello and welcome to Club Talk Hurling. We're doing previews this week, of course, as we always do. Brought to you by Slattery Sullivan Insurances in Nenagh. If you want to get 10% off all new business quotes, call 067 56 705 and give the reference OurGame. Michael Verney, we'll start off in Wexford because we're at semi-final stages already. You were at the quarter-final last weekend of Shelmaliers when they beat Fate Harriers. But it's mad how quickly we've gotten down to the final four.
Yeah, it's unreal. It's funny as well because the Wexford Championship is getting so much exposure because it's so far ahead of everywhere else, probably bar Waterford. They're getting all the TV games. I'd say there could be a TV game again there this weekend. They're getting loads of good exposure. And funnily enough, there was a lot of people giving out, probably me included and probably you included, over how quickly the championship was being played off. Now it was the way it was structured at the start was the teams could be out after 4 days. Now they changed that a small bit. Where it was a bit longer, maybe a week or two, that you could be out after. But the general reception in Wexford has been really, really positive towards it. I was chatting to Derek McGrath after the game the other day. He's involved with Fate Harriers. He said that the feedback from players was really, really positive about kind of a blitz-like championship, and particularly in a strong dual county like that, where you have 8 or 9 clubs that are playing senior football and senior hurling. They're getting to focus on one and not have to juggle the two of them. Shelmaliers are definitely one of those sides. Last won the football in 2018, won the hurling in 2014. Chatting to Brian Malone, obviously Wexford football stalwart, he was delighted with the fact that they could just focus on hurling and thought that it was really suiting them, and he thought it was really suiting them even to play in the summer as well. But that's going to be one of the games of the weekend. Shells in Glenbarntown. Managed by Jason Ryan, who seems to have them absolutely flying. They're really out-muscled and out-taught St. Martin's at the weekend, and they'll be favourites going into this game. But it's a tricky one. They've done the donkey work probably for everybody else by beating the Martins, who were probably the outstanding favourites for the championship. But sometimes teams don't back it up. Like, if you wanted to beat Martins, it was probably the time to beat them was in the final, where you had silver in your hands after. They're going to have 2 big games to get over to get their county title, and this is far from a formality.
That's quite a feather in the cap of Jason Ryan. I mean, it's funny, you go back 12 years and he's leading the Wexford footballers to an All-Ireland semi-final, involved with Kildare in the meantime. You know, he's been around the block for sure. I think in some way, like, one of the most crucial aspects of Gaelic football, which he's been involved in, is how you use your goalkeeper. And he's got a leading goalkeeper in Mark Fanning. He's a brilliant sticks man. You know he can carry the ball out the field. Obviously nice that he can smash home a penalty as well. So it's probably like the perfect combination of manager to get the best out of the goalkeeper, which is such a crucial part of the team, especially when it's not exactly a side full of star players.
No, definitely not. I was chatting to Liam Spratt the other night down in Wexford Park at the Harriers and Shells game, and he was just saying there was a bit of a row or a schmozzle or something like that in the Martins game, and he literally said Jason Ryan went close to the row, bellowed a couple of words, and all the Glenbarntown lads just dispersed away from the row. It seems like he really has them kind of thinking off the same hymn sheet. They all seem to obviously really, really respect him. He's got an unbelievable coaching CV, as well as been with Glenbarntown as a manager. He's coaching Thomas Davis in Dublin as well, which is he's a busy man. I'd say he's on the road or in a pitch nearly every night of the week. But they definitely seem to be buying into him. And just what you said, no superstars, like going down through, the standout players for Glenbarntown the other night. Connor Mahoney hit 5 brilliant points from play. Did a really good team performance. Other lads like Michael O'Regan standing tall at centre back, John Lacey playing a huge role, and Dave Clark. To be honest with you, guys that I'm not familiar with at all, and that you're not probably familiar with either. So young guys probably getting a chance to mould these kind of young fellas. Funnily enough, if you take Brian Malone out of it, who's more renowned as a footballer, and probably Simon Dunne, has been involved with the Wexford hurlers and footballers. There's not a huge amount of lads from Shells that would stand out either. Not really anyone else that's played county. Glenn Malone is a county footballer, so like there's none of the big Wexford stars probably involved in this semi-final, but there's 2 really, really well-rounded teams.
And this is the funny thing, when I was talking about Shelmaliers there to a few of the boys last night, I was actually struggling to think of the names of these players that I had actually been quite impressed with. And you mentioned Simon Donoghue, and he was very good around midfield. And what I was impressed with was the way they moved the ball to each other in tight conditions, and they weren't afraid to carry the ball and hand pass it and move off the shoulder, which, being a dual club and having won a county title senior recently a couple of times, it's probably no surprise that they can do that. So this should actually be a very tactical sort of a game. there's not the big names that, you know, St. Anne's got knocked out last week. They have Liam McGovern, they have Jim O'Keefe, St. Martin's. They're just full of star names. And it is just so interesting to think that these two fairly ordinary on paper teams, they're the ones through, more so because of the power of the collective than anything else. So it's actually quite hard for us guys who wouldn't have seen these teams play too often to really actually, you know how this one is going to go. But just from a surface level, it seems like it will be quite tight and tactical.
This is a 50-50 game, without a doubt. But I was very impressed with how Shells kind of totally stifled the Harriers running game the other day. Really, as I said, they're Brian Malone was saying, like, basically the football team is the hurling team. So they're a really fit, physical team. One interesting thing, Ross Banville, who was leading player for the under-20s last year and their free taker, one of their best forwards, he came off with 15 minutes to go the last day. Whether he was carrying a knock or not, I'm not 100%. But his fitness is huge for Shells. And Glen will be favourites, but I think Shells could take this one.
Yeah, I haven't watched them. Geez, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go all the way. But interestingly, in the other semi-final, Oulart Bala against Nenagh. So this is Nenagh won it just a couple of years ago. Oulart last won it in 2016. And when I went through the panel that won it for Oulart Bala the last time in 2016, and you generally think that a lot of the same players would be involved. Like, at inter-county level in 5 years you could have huge turnover, because there's always minors and under-21s, lads who are the cream of the crop within the county coming through, and generally they should be able to nudge some of the older players out of contention. But with a club team, you could have an awful lot of the same lads there for 10 or 12 years. So I was surprised to see that just 9 of the players used in the 2016 county final, when last they won it, were involved in the quarter-final victory over St. Anne's. That is a massive turnover.
It is a massive turnover, and I suppose when you think of Oulart and you think of, you know, the kind of legends within the club of the last 10 or 15 years, the guys that, you know, won all those county titles within that period of time, were beaten in all the Leinster finals and eventually got over the line against your good selves, Coola.
Which you love bringing up. You bring that up every single time we talk about it.
You have enough medals. I might as well say so in the boot over one major defeat that you do have. You think of Keith Rossiter, Mick Jacob, David Redmond, Des Mighton, Rory Jacob, even Ben O'Connor that was in the goals and is famously always the lad that's pictured jumping across in front of the camera anytime they win anything. None of those lads are involved, and David Redmond is the only one that wasn't involved in an intermediate team that was beaten the last day. So they were all playing intermediate this year for whatever reason. Whether some of those guys will be available now for the senior team kind of remains to be seen. But Liam Dunne has obviously worked the oracle. A lot of new guys in there, including his own 2 sons. I think is it Martin Og and Tommy Story.
Tommy, yeah.
Yeah, maybe mightn't both be his sons. One might be a nephew or a cousin. But like, that was a big surprise result against Anne's the last day, and Garrett Sinnott, known locally as Snot Sinnott, was actually sent off in that game as well. But Nicky Kerwin, real kind of impish, kind of small corner forward, but really, really lively and hard to handle, was the man that kind of was the difference with 2 goals. But like, they'll fancy themselves again. They're kind of coming from that field. Like, we'll probably do a power ranking of Wexford in a minute, and they'll probably be 4th and probably well below everyone at 4th in my view, but they'll really fancy themselves at the weekend.
Yeah, and just throwing through some of those players that were involved in 2016. Owen Moore, do you remember when Owen Moore was playing in the previous seasons and he was wearing the leggings, the Under Armour leggings or whatever it was, and he was getting slated for that? That might have been around the time that they lost him on Leinster Rangers. Now obviously it was because he was dealing with a hamstring injury, and if it's grand for Ryan Giggs to do it back in the glory days, maybe it's alright for a player, especially if he's getting medical advice. This might keep your hamstrings a bit warmer and less inclined to pick up an injury. But anyway, he's still involved. Sean Murphy was involved back then. Kevin Sheridan, who's now captain. Conor O'Leary, who now, and I know you mentioned O'Connor being in goals in 2015, but he was actually goalkeeper in 2016. I think he'd been minor goalie for a couple of years. He's out the field now, actually, at midfield. Murtagh Doyle, Tommy Story, Garrett Sinnott, Martin Og Story, and Nicky Kerwin, of course, would have started back then, scoring 2-1 off the bench the last day against St. Anne's. So yeah, if you're going with your 1 to 4 here in Wexford, and as we said, we mightn't have seen all of these teams as often as we would have liked, but what way are you going to go?
I'd probably go Shells 1, just because I think they're really efficient, really consistent, no stars, but seriously fit outfit, marginally ahead of Glyn. But funnily enough, like you would think on paper that the county champions should come out at semi-final. It doesn't always work like that. For example, if Glynn do beat Shells at the weekend, they'll have beaten Martins and Shells be in the final, but they'll still have a very tough proposition in the final. Probably against Nenagh, who would have number 3. I would have 1, 2 and 3 relatively close, and I would have Oulart a bit behind in 4th. But I wouldn't be expecting Nenagh, led by Conor McDonald, Cottle Dunbar, even Charlie McGuckey, and I'd expect them to be getting over the line against Oulart the weekend. I believe they had a really strong last quarter against Ferns last weekend in the quarter final, and I'd expect them just to have maybe a bit too much firepower for Oulart. But it wouldn't surprise me in a way, because the Oulart result against St. Anne's did really, really surprise me. So they have a bit of momentum kind of going for themselves now, and they have all that tradition behind them, and they know how to win.
Yeah, well, see, the thing with like Liam Dunne taking over, and it's hard to know how many of these players will be back, the old legends that aren't playing at the moment. But he was involved with Ballantyre St. John's for a couple of years, and their results were ropey enough at times. A couple of very heavy defeats in the Dublin Championship. And I would have thought, oh, look, it's not working, maybe just coming up, tipping away with them, and, happy enough then to head off into the sunset eventually. But I was speaking with 1 or 2 of the players, and they did say he was really good. They were very happy with him. Now, this is just the lads I was talking to, maybe other lads will have a different opinion. So that kind of made me think, all right, fair enough. And then he goes back to Oulart now, and, to get a big win like they did the last day against St. Anne's, because St. Anne's were in the county final last year, let's not forget. I think they could give Nenagh a decent shot here. I mean, Conor McDonald.
You have to remember as well, Shane, like Liam Dunne was a county manager. Like he obviously brings good credentials to the table. There was some ropey results when he was at Wexford as well, but there was some good results as well, especially beating Cork in that qualifier down Thurles. So like he's dropping back a level to club hurling, and he's going back to his own club. So you'd imagine there'd be a bit of a bounce. Like, I don't know the reason why, or if there is a reason why a lot of these kind of legends aren't involved, but I'd say he'd have his lads at a fairly fever pitch for the weekend, and they'd fancy themselves.
Yeah, definitely. When he took over Wexford first, they were kind of going nowhere, and I was speaking to some of the players around that time, for example Owen Quigley, and he did talk about how the body fat of the players was through the roof, and that he kind of came in and helped turn things around and bring down the body fat even, and they became a bit more competitive with some of the top teams. But anyway, just to go on to my power rankings here, I think it's a really tough one to call, but Shelmaliers, I was just so impressed with how they played the last day. I'd probably go with Nenagh in a second. I think they'll sneak through this. Oulart, I think, 3rd, and I'm going to put Glyn Barntown 4th. But look, that could be
I just say you're going to get absolutely slaughtered. The majority of people in Wexford are confident that Glyn Barntown are going to win the title. I have Shells 1, Glyn 2. You have Glyn 4.
But the reason I have that is because I think that Shells will beat them, and that's why. And I think the other game is really, really tight. So that's part of my reasoning for it. So
okay,
we'll move on to the Waterford quarterfinals, which are on this weekend. Knockout fever already. Rowan Moore against Passage is the first one we'll talk about. Really interesting subplot in this one. Like Peter Queally, he won a county title with Passage and is now the manager of Rowan Moore. Tom Flynn sent that comment in, so that makes that one interesting. Ballygunner, they'll certainly fancy beating 4 Mile Water. You'd expect them to walk it, wouldn't you?
You probably would, to be fair. There's going to be an awful lot expected of Jamie Byrne and his brother Tom, and they'll be expected to lead the fight. But like you're talking about the 2 or 3 kind of classy lads with 4 Mile Water, and you're looking at a squad full of class in Ballygunner, and the only team I can see beating Ballygunner is De La Salle, being honest with you, and it's going to have to be a going day for De La Salle if that's to happen, and it's going to have to be an off day for Ballygunner. So I think they'll be winning handy enough there.
Yeah, I don't think too many people will be going for Mount Sion against De La Salle this weekend. And that's basically because you wonder where the firepower is going to come from Mount Sion without having Ozzie Gleeson. He got that straight red card last week. He's not going to be available. Now, Martin O'Neill is back from his travels. He got 11 points the last day. But you just have to question whether there'll be enough match winners in that attack.
You would, to be fair. I don't have an intricate knowledge of Waterford hurling, but the bits I saw last year, De La Salle were clearly second behind Ballygunner in the pecking order, and a bit ahead of the rest. And you would imagine that Mount Sion would have to have everyone at their disposal to be really, really competitive. So it's De La Salle by a nice handful for me there.
Isn't it interesting that Lismore were Waterford intermediate champions only a couple of years ago, and now they're this team that just relentlessly score and concede goals.
Yeah, I have it written down there that Lismore are like the Brazil of Waterford hurling. They'll concede like 5-15 and try and outscore you by hitting 420 or something like that. And every time we see it, like Maurice is putting up these crazy scores. He's putting up like a team score. He's scoring like 215 or 217 or 315. And I know the OurGame Twitter account had a picture of one of the most feared kind of subs in the country, Big Dan, coming on. Like, he's in some shape, isn't he? In fairness, I think he's 43 or 44. He's in outrageous shape to be coming in off the bench. But like, they're gonna have to tighten up at the back. Abbeyside gave Ballysaggart an awful trimming. I don't think they've been back. They were back in the county final a couple of years ago, I think, and they'd been in a county final maybe 7 or 8 years before that again. But I'd probably be fancying Abbeyside in that one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we had a comment in from Judge Goodmark talking about the Kilkenny Championship, and he said O'Loughlin Gales already qualified top of the section. They might not be at it this weekend. Could we have a punt on James Stephens? So there's 2 groups of 6, and O'Loughlin Gales are top with 4 points. James Stephens also have 4 points. Then you've Bennett's Bridge on 2, Tullaroan and Ballyhale on 1, and Danesford on 0. So could you give people sort of an idea and a steer on what way the Kilkenny Championship is working with these 2 groups of 6?
Yeah, so normally within the groups of 6 they'd have enough time to play all 5 of the other teams in the group, but they don't. They're obviously caught with time this year. So each team was just pulled out and they're going to play 3 games. So it's kind of a luck of a draw. Like, Tullaroan got 3 bad games without being smart with you. They got Ballyhale in the first round, which they drew against. They got James Stephens, and they got, who were they out against this weekend?
Let me see. Tullaroan are out against Bennett's Bridge. Yeah, that is a tough assignment.
That's not a great draw either. So like, depending on the 3 games that you get, will have a massive bearing on it. That comment that came in is interesting. O'Loughlin's are already through from that group, and Dicksboro are already through from the other group. So you would think that there's obviously more on the line for James Stephens, because there's 2 get through from each group. So if James Stephens win this weekend, they take out kind of any ambiguity about not getting out, and they're straight into the knockout stages. But to say that O'Loughlin's wouldn't be at it against their city rivals, I can't see it. I just can't see it. I don't think either of those teams are ever going anything less than full bore against each other. So I just can't see it. Just on the knockout stages in Kilkenny, so the first round knockout game, so there's Group A and Group B. So the third in Group A plays the bottom team in Group B, 4th in Group A plays the 5th in Group B, 5th in Group A plays the 4th in Group B, 6th in Group A plays the 3rd in Group B, and then the first round losers, so whoever loses those 4 games, they go into the relegation semi-finals or whatever and can't get back into the knockout stages. So it's an interesting one. So you're looking at Ballyhale obviously down near the bottom with 1 point. They could be under pressure, but they do have time. The Kilkenny Championship does give you maybe not as much time as previous years, but there is a bit of time for them to find their feet, find a bit of a flow and get moving. Like, they won't mind really where they come in the group, as long as they're ready to go for that kind of provisional kind of quarter-final game.
As much as Ballyhale have had probably a bit of a tough time in the sense that their manager Henry Shefflin left, their centre back and captain Michael Fennelly left, Adrian Mullen does a cruciate. They have had a relatively favourable draw. You know, if you were asked, would you like to have a team coming up from intermediate in it, you'd be thinking, grand, we'll take that on the draw. Danesford, who are currently bottom and not really challenging for county titles, you'd say fair enough, we'll take that. Now O'Loughlin's are obviously a very good team and beat them handily enough last week, so that's a tough draw. But in the overall heel of the hunt, like, if Shamrocks don't come out of this, and I expect that they will ultimately, that they'll make their way through and beat Danesford this weekend, but if they didn't come through, they'd only really have themselves to blame.
They would, to be fair, and it's a funny one. A new manager coming in, getting wins under the belt is great, but he's probably, James O'Connor has probably learned an awful lot from the Tullaroan game. He probably learned an awful lot from the O'Loughlin's game. It's almost like having your confidence broken a small bit, and then you have the chance to build it back up against Danesford, and then in the next day, and then get on a bit of a run, rather than, you know, winning 3 games against, you know, inferior opposition, then coming up against a big team in a big game and been beaten and been knocked out. So he's probably found out a lot about who needs to be playing where, who needs to be filling in for Michael Fennelly at centre back. I think TJ's brother Richie seems to be filling in a centre back at the moment. Like, that'll take a bit of time to bed in, but he's a very good hurler as well. You know, he can play in goals obviously as well. So I think they have enough time to kind of time their run without being smart. So they'll have I don't think they'll have any excuses if they're not in the the reckoning at the end.
Bennett or Tullaroan basically have had the draw from hell, haven't they? In getting Tullaroan last week, getting James Stephens, who were county finalists last week. Sorry, Ballyhale Shamrocks getting them the double All-Ireland champions, getting James Stephens, and now this week having to play Bennett's Bridge, who were county finalists only a couple of years ago, and dispatched Danesford last week 316 to 117. Very, very hard going.
Yeah, it's not a great draw, and like when you look at the Bennett's Bridge team on paper with Liam Blanchfield, I'm not too sure if David Blanchfield, his brother, a big powerhouse of a wing back, not too sure if he's back. He had a serious injury in recent years. You have Sean Morrissey as well. Jason Clear seems to be back fit and going really, really well. So when you go down through their team, it was fairly, it looked like they were probably going to kick on after the 2018 final, having run Ballyhale close for a long time. But that's kind of how competitive Kilkenny is. You can be going good one year, if you're slight bit off, the next year you're not there, and even in the quarterfinal stages. When you look down through that Tullaroan team, though, and you're looking at young Tommy Walsh, full-back, and you're looking at Pádraig Walsh, centre-back, and Shane Walsh, Martin Keown, centre forward, Tommy full forward. They have lots of star power as well. I think Tullaroan will be hopeful enough of getting a result. James Stephens are, in the top 2 or 3 teams of Kilkenny. Ran them relatively close last week. So that's going to be an interesting game. I find it hard enough to call that. That's like nearly a 50-50 game for me.
Yeah, if you're Tullaroan, you lose by 4 points to James Stephens, having previously somehow turned a victory over Ballyhale into a draw. They were in pole position throughout that, played really good hurling. They'll fairly fancy themselves of giving this a good rattle at the weekend, so we'll see how that goes. The other side of the draw, Group B, we'll start off with Erin's Own against Dixborough. So Erin's Own, they saw off Clara last week 316 to 112 without Conor Fogarty. I think people might remember the quarterfinal that happened last year between these two teams, 1-8 to 1-6 in the P1SSINGS of rain last year. Wasn't exactly a classic, was it?
Yeah, it was a real dogged affair, wasn't it? In fairness, real dogged stuff. The sort of game that Erin's Own would thrive in, to be honest with you, because they're a tough physical side. I believe there's been a nice little injection of youth there this year as well. This will be an interesting game. Dixborough are already through, so this is probably a matter of Erin's Own can leapfrog them in first place if they win the game. So there's still plenty on the line. I believe Killian Buckley is back flying it again for Dixborough, which will be music to the ears of Brian Cody, who I'm sure has been keeping a close eye on him. Probably doubts about whether he was going to be able to get back to that sort of level with his knee problems. But by all accounts, from what I'm hearing, absolutely flying it with Dixborough at the moment. That'll be an interesting game. Roar and the Stieg against Clara. The Roar are probably going to struggle a bit. Richie Lahey looks like he's out with a serious hamstring injury that mightn't even see him play with Kilkenny for the rest of this year. He could be out for the rest of the season. He'd be one of their better players, along with probably the likes of Kieran Joyce. Clara were beaten by Erin's Own in the last game, but had a win in the first game. They were poor the last day, beaten by 10 against an Erin's Own side that didn't have Conor Fogarty, but I'd expect them to bounce back this weekend, even though the Roar had a good result last weekend, getting a draw against Mullinavat, which was probably unexpected. And the last game then, Mullinavat against Greg Ballycallan. Billy Ryan is still out, I believe, for Greg Ballycallan, and I'd expect Mullinavat to come through there.
Yeah, and even Greg Ballycallan winless so far. They've conceded 145 in the 2 games, but more worryingly, they've scored just 29 points. So when you're averaging less than 15 points a game, it's going to be tough to win them. Even though I know sometimes these county championship games can be attritional, but it's pretty low score in return. Actually, the Roars is only a point better, so that'll tell you where they're at the minute. So it's a real wrong time to lose Richie Lahey. We'll move on to the Kerry Championship, and I'll just run through the fixtures there. St Brendan's against Kilmoyley, Ballyhaig against Ballyduff, Sligo Naveown against Eastleigh, and Cooler Strand Hill against Calgary St Joseph's. Right, the Tipperary Championship this weekend. There's a couple of tasty little morsels going on here. JK Brackens are against Ross Gray, Drummond Inch against Killadangan, Holy Cross Ballycahill against Clonalty, and Aero Gannacarty against Nenagh. So that's one side of it, and I'll just flick down to where I have some of the other ones.
Just on that big game for Nenagh, like after not a heavy defeat, but we weren't expecting them to go down like they did last weekend, and they seemed like they were a bit listless as well against Clonalty. That's a massive game for them. They have to win have to win to go through. So huge game for Nenagh.
Yeah, absolutely, because they've been so close so many years and keep kind of falling at the final hurdle or the second last hurdle. It is definitely time for, like, I did think at this point they would have won the county title, and Éire Óg no mugs, they regularly get to county semi-finals and quarter-finals, so that won't be an easy game. By the way, I had skipped over a couple of games in Kerry by mistake there. Lismore against Abbeydorney and Causeway against Cratto O'Neill's. Yeah, so moving on to the next round of games in Tipperary, McCarthy Burris against Thurles Sarsfields. I think everyone is going to expect Thurles, who look to have found their groove, to have it handy enough against McCarthy Burris. Killerwan McDonough's against Lockmore Castellani. I think that's the game of the weekend, because winner takes all and gets through with Thurles Sarsfields.
Yeah, I think that's the one. I'm going to it in Thurles on Sunday. Thankfully, looking forward to it, actually, to be honest, because it's, without being smart, it's kind of shit or get off the pot for Killerwan. If they don't win this game, they're gone. If they win it, I think they're back in with a big chance again, because they can turn their season around. They've already had big disappointment of, probably collapsing is the only way of describing it, against Thurles in the last 15 minutes, even though Thurles are a brilliant side. Killerwan kind of were authors of their own downfall kind of there as well. So if they can get a result against Lockmore, any sort of, a point will do in, turgid, dogged kind of affair. And it just brings the confidence back up again, because I'm sure they were low after that Thurles game. Similarly for Lockmore, beating, I think it was 9 points against Thurles last weekend, have a chance to really bounce back against a good side. This would be a massive confidence booster. Like, I would say that Killerwan would be live outsiders to win the title if they can win at the weekend.
They really need it. I mean, I watched Lockmore against Thurles, and like the first half, they were right there with Thurles, even though it felt like Thurles were getting the scores a little bit easier. And maybe Noel McGrath was finding it tough to get in the game, and maybe John McGrath wasn't quite as free-flowing as we know he can be. Lockmore were in that game too, whereas Killerwan, they were actually pressing from the front for a long time, and they looked well in control, and I felt, they were in a great position to win, and then to lose the last part of the game 1-8 to a point. How much does that affect your confidence going down the stretch for the season? But I think they could win this game here. I'd be interested to see, does Craig Morgan go on John McGrath, or will it be someone else? John Maher was impressing me very much in that first half against Thurles. Maybe he's the man for the job. Both a county football panellist and previously a county hurling panellist would possibly have done more on the county hurling scene, but for injuries. Like, he would have had an awful lot of injuries back in the day. So it's a tough game to call. I think Killerwan have slightly more stars, but again, I'm just not sure, based on how they faded out against Thurles and based on the bit of a disappointing performance against Bursley in the county semi-final last year. I just don't know if they'll get it across the line against the Lockmore team, where plenty of them have won county titles.
Would you have more faith in Lockmore? That's the way I put it, yeah.
There's probably that, just because that an awful lot of their players are used to winning county titles. Well, county titles, obviously players on both sides have won All-Ireland titles and Munster titles with Tipperary, but I think there's going to be an awful lot for Niall O'Mara to do in this game. Jerome Cahill really needs to step up and probably just really get in on the scoring act here. Craig Morgan is probably going to be under pressure. Like, they do have an awful lot of quality. Both teams have plenty of quality. But if you were to ask me gut instinct, I kind of think Lockmore will win this, but of course I could be proven wrong.
Yeah, it is a very hard game to call. Like Killerwan didn't do what I would have expected them to do against Mike Carthy. Would have expected them to win pulling up against them, and they didn't. They just got, I think it was 5 points or something in the end. I probably favour Lockmore as well, but in a funny way, I kind of gladly have egg on my face next Monday when we're chatting if Killerwan do win, because I think they're obviously not far across the border there from us in Border in Clough-Jordan. So, and we played them in a practice game, and I was very impressed with them. But this is huge for them. This is huge they've been waiting to make a breakthrough. Sometimes a team might need that sort of adversity, and to overcome that mid-season now and get a result against Lockmore, they'll be back on the horse again. It's a huge game for them. Huge game. It's funny. It sounds a bit stupid, but it's a huge game for the future of their club in a way, because they're going to be out of the championship at the group stages, having thought going into it that they were contenders in the top 2 or 3 to win it, but they will be if they can get a result. Massive game. Wouldn't be surprised if it was a draw, to be honest with you. Wouldn't be a bit surprised if it was a draw, but I probably would favour Lockmore as well.
You make a very good point actually about having a winner takes all clash as your final group game, Because if you win that, all of a sudden anything that's kind of hasn't gone right, you can almost be like, look lads, we're starting off from scratch again here. We've won a game. When it's all on the line, we know we can do it. That other previous group game that we lost, fair enough, it wasn't all on the line then. We win this, let's say you get a decent draw then, you win that game. All of a sudden actually confidence is through the roof. And you say to yourselves, look, we got the loss out of our system when it didn't matter, and we can kick on now and win a county.
Yeah, the Turles game would seem like an eternity away if they didn't get a result the weekend. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that wasn't us.
Yeah, it's like 2 seasons within 3 games. They start a new season Sunday evening if they get a result. So it's a huge game for them.
So we'll go into Group 4 then. Burgess against Toomevara and Borrisoleigh against Upperchurch Drumban. Now 3 out of the 4 teams can get through here. Burgess are gone. And I think Toomevara will very much fancy winning that game. Now they're on 2 points after drawing with both Borrisoleigh and Upperchurch Drumban. Borrisoleigh have 3 points and Upperchurch also have 3 points. So if Toomevara win this, something's got to give between Borrisoleigh and Upperchurch.
I think this is really, really intriguing, to be honest with you. The fact that Toom, even though we got slated in our commentary for saying that Toom snatched a draw against Boris because somebody just said typical Boris bias, which is a nice little alliteration actually, Boris bias, and they said Toom were well on top of that game or whatever, and you're looking at the game with rose tinted glasses or whatever, but like Toom should beat Burgess, and like Boris could easily be out here. They could easily be out, so they'll have to be on their toes. I'm sure you're not going to give any state secrets away whether your brother Paddy is back fit and to play this weekend. No,
yeah, none now me.
I didn't think you would, but huge game because Upperchurch can put up a score against any side. Real clever use of possession. I know James Barry is not playing with them, which is a big loss for them. But funny enough, because he's been away with Tipperary so much, they kind of were able to develop a game plan, and because he's a defender, he wasn't 100% central to the game plan. The game plan was bigger than any one player. They're a good side, and if Boris aren't on their game, they could be out of the championship with their tail between their legs at the weekend. So they'll have to be on guard big time. Yeah,
I think it's not far off a 50-50 game. At Borrisoleigh, they gave Shane Kenny some game time up in the forwards. I think the last day scored 3 points. He'd be grandson of the great Sean Kenny, who captained Tipp to an All-Ireland many moons ago at this point. Yeah, it's going to be a tight game, and you do expect Toomevara to get the job done, which means that 6 o'clock on, is it Saturday evening or Sunday evening, whichever it is, that's going to be quite a cracker, and I'd say there'll be skin and hair flying. We'll jump onto the Westmeath Championship there, and that's Castletown Gagan against Delvin. I think I have some other fixtures there somewhere. Yeah, Clonkill against Castle Pollard, so hopefully I've got them all there. In Wicklow, you've got Kiltegan against Carnew, and then also Avondale against Glenealy and Bray Emmett against Greystones. We'll jump into Carlow, because this is quite interesting to see St Mullins against Mount Leinster Rangers. These are the top 2 in the county. 35 county titles between them. It's funny, like Mount Leinster will probably always be able to say to St Mullins, well look, we won a Leinster title. But like Mount Leinster, they're a modern kind of powerhouse, but they never actually won a county title until 2006.
No, it's gas. Yeah, you kind of, I suppose it's recency bias against it. We talked about before. You just think that they've always been dominating in Carlow because they've been, not dominating recently, but they've been winning county title here or county title there every second or third year. And obviously that Leinster final and the AIB ad that is still played out the whole time of the Mount Leinster boys in the dressing room and giving it everything and that kind of crack. But it's always interesting when these two play against each other. I was chatting to Marty Kavanagh before, obviously the Carlow sharpshooter, lovely hurler, but he's just saying about like a lot of his cousins. I think he's 12 or 13 cousins playing for Mount Leinster Rangers. He talked about it before here as well. He just said, he's 12 or 13 first cousins, not only just cousins. And they regularly play in county finals and in group stages, and he's related to the Codys, the Hickeys, the Grennan and Murphy families. He explained at the time, off the pitch and at Christmas, we'd always be together, and when you go out and play against each other, you leave that aside. Off the pitch, we're pretty much brothers, we get on great. I suppose it was strange at the start playing against them, but we're used to it now. You just have to put it aside, you do what you have to do to win. You'll be hitting each other and whatever on the pitch, but sure, that's grand. After the game, you shake hands. You remember even saying like they'll all be regularly going to the cinema together and doing various things together because they're obviously so closely related. So it's going to be an interesting clash. I think it's interesting as well. Carlow are one of those counties where it would be heavy enough kind of duel as well, and Mount Leinster would be one of those where a lot of them will be kicking football as well, and they'll probably benefit no more than Shells in Wexford. They'll benefit from, they're just focusing on hurling at the moment, and I think Carlow is the last football championship to be played. So those dual clubs, like if you're ever going to win the two of them in the 1 year, this is probably the chance for the likes of Shells, for the likes of Mount Leinster to do the two in 1 year, because you just can focus on one, get your fitness up really, really high, focus on one, focus on the hurling first actually in both instances, and then go back to the football. Hurling is a game where you really have to be playing it, nearly solely playing it. It's just, the skills are so intricate kind of almost, and when the ball is in around your foot, you have to be so used to it. You can't be leaving a hurl down for a week and go and play another court. It's very difficult. So that's going to be an interesting game this weekend, and I follow the progress of Mount Leinster closely in both championships.
Yeah, but St. Mullins, like, they have 27 county titles so far, outstripping Mount Leinster. And I wonder, is the forward power, like both of these teams are obviously capable of beating each other. We've seen that over recent years. They've both picked up county titles in the last couple of seasons. But St. Mullins, that forward line of Marty Kavanagh, as you've mentioned, James Doyle, who of course I saw up close and personal last year with Coola, Seamus Murphy, a ball winner. Like, they have an awful lot of weapons up there.
Yeah, and without being smart, Mullins are going back to their county championship, having beaten one of the best sides in the country last year in Coola, and back-to-back All-Ireland champions up until in recent years. So that'll give them an awful lot of confidence going back to their local championship, to know, fair enough, Mount Leinster maybe always had that they had provincial success and had gotten to an All-Ireland final and probably had that in the bank. But Mullins probably have a bit in the bank now as well, and will come back with an awful lot of confidence into the local championship. Obviously not a knockout game, and they're probably going to meet at later stages in the championship, but still always interesting anytime they clash.
Okay, so that's it. Brought to you by Slattery Sullivan Insurances in Nenagh. If you want to get a quote there, call 067 56705, and with the OurGame reference code, you'll get 10% of all new business quotes. If there's any championship we missed, any game we missed, anything you want us to talk about, let us know, and we'll talk about it again next week. Michael Verney, thank you very much.
Cheers, Jed.